Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. The People's Voice podcast is an investigative news podcast where I'm dedicated to covering stories and social issues that I feel that are sometimes overlooked, underreported, or buried by mainstream or social media. The purpose of the podcast is to shed light on what I consider to be some important issues and offer some insightful analysis, also recommendations, and hopefully some actionable solutions that you could utilize to address these issues. The People's Voice podcast can be heard on all podcast platforms. Put out a new episode each and every Friday. And then we also put a video out on YouTube as well on a weekly basis for those who would like to watch the podcast. But in any event, we say welcome. Welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I want to talk about the issue regarding public school transportation here in the United States, public school transportation. And I want to talk about this today because for those who may not be aware, in the United States, there continues to be a huge issue regarding public school transportation. Specifically when you talk about the bus driver shortage that's going on. To combine or to even exacerbate this issue even more, in the state of Ohio, there is a law in place that requires public school districts to provide school transportation to private school students and charter school students. And when I saw this story, I couldn't even, the only thing that came to my mind was just, because when you already have an issue providing transportation for students because of the school bus shortage, and for those who don't know, just to give you some context, throughout the United States, there is a driver shortage regarding school bus drivers. And so districts across the country are continuing to scramble and try to come up with inventive ways and marketing and better benefit plans to recruit people to drive school buses because they cannot find school bus drivers, or at least people that consistently want to do the job. Because of this, it's affecting how children get to school. Now, in the state of Ohio, they have the same issue, but it's even a bigger issue because not only do they have to provide transportation for, I think it's almost like 2 million kids in public schools in Ohio, but they also now have to try to find public transportation for private school and charter school students. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what's going on in the state of Ohio, and not only in the state of Ohio, because there are other states that also practice this, not to the level of Ohio, but I want to talk about this today and kind of highlight what's going on. So in the state of Ohio, I was reading an article from the Guardian, and in this article, the headline caught me because it said Ohio requires buses for private school kids. It says public school students have to find their own ride, and I'm like, what is going on in Ohio? It says school districts are responsible for transporting private and charter school kids, leaving thousands of public school students behind. And I'm like, well, why would they be doing that? Like, who made that decision? Well, come to find out, there's actually a law in the state of Ohio that requires this, which is why this is occurring. And as the headline said there, this is affecting thousands of public school students and also penalizing and utilizing public dollars for this. Because in that law in the state of Ohio, the law states that not only are public school districts required to pick up children and take them to school who attend private and charter schools, but in the event that they do not provide that service, they can be fined per child. Now, the law in Ohio states that if a school district decides or finds it impractical that they can't bus a child to school, they can be fined up to $600. They can be fined $600 up to $1,200 per child for that year. And that's because in the state of Ohio, they've estimated that the cost of transporting a student is about $1,500 per student. So this fine that they have in place, some are arguing that, well, it's not as high as it costs to transport a child, and some people are asking for that fine to be $1,500, the same cost that it actually is required to transport a child to school. So now you have these school districts that are obviously feeling this pressure because not only do they have this school driver bus shortage, but now they have to find ways to basically siphon out the limited service already, or the service that they're struggling with providing drivers for, to private school and non-charter school students. And listen, in my opinion, this is a huge problem, because, utilizing public school dollars, especially when you start talking about private schools, is an issue for me. And, I've already given my opinion on universal vouchers, and this is just right in line with, that same type of ideology. If a parent decides to utilize non-public school systems or non-public school choices, I don't have a problem with that. But the responsibility cannot then be thrown back onto the state or also the taxpayers that provide the funding for the state. In my opinion, that's just not right. And beyond just the dollar cost, it then puts a struggle on the children themselves. Matter of fact, I was reading a study from this is from Hop Skip Drive. They do a what they call the state of school transportation report. For their 2024 report, they talked about this in detail as well. But one of the things that they stated was that when transportation becomes a burden for the parents, it becomes basically a ripple effect. And it says that 41% of parents reported that their children's school district had reduced or eliminated bus service, forcing them to become chauffeurs. Now, again, this is a huge issue because you're talking about, especially when you start talking about certain inner city neighborhoods where the parents don't even have the means to provide this additional disposable income, or don't even have the time to take their children to school, which ultimately plays a huge role in terms of a child's education. Matter of fact, in that same report from Hop Skip Drive, they talked about what this does in terms of the actual attendance of children coming to school. And in that report, it says that talking to school leaders, in this report, it says that over 44% of school leaders identified transportation challenges as a factor that contributes to chronic absenteeism. And more than 21% report transportation challenges are the biggest contributing factor to chronic absenteeism in their school, even more than student health issues. So this strain on the system in Ohio has all type of rippling effects, from not only the pressure on the family, but also just in terms of the attendance of children themselves. To even multiply the issue more in the state of Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, because of this law, they basically came up with another law, which states that children 13 years or older could utilize or would have to utilize public transportation to get to school. And now, you know, and I've said this before, and if you listen to the podcast long enough, I'm a New York City kid. I grew up in New York. So utilizing public transportation is not, for me, is not an issue, right? Because especially when you talk about a city like New York that has, one of the most intricate and connected transit systems in the world, okay, I get it. But in other areas of the country where it's not as connected, that can be a major issue. Matter of fact, in Dayton, Ohio, they recently had cut out the funding to provide public transportation as well for public school children 13 years or older. So basically, if you were 13 years or older at the start of this school year in Dayton, Ohio, you had to find your own way to get to school. And now they recently reversed that, at least on a temporary basis. But again, this creates a huge issue for families and children themselves. Matter of fact, let me play this from WDTN, who's this is the CBS station in Ohio, in Dayton. They talked about this. They interviewed a student where she talked about just the struggle of trying to get to school because of this issue. So let me play this, and then I'll probably close out from there. But this is from WT.
3 days of finding their own way to school, one student says they are relieved they have a solid mode of transit now.
I was pretty overwhelmed. It was kind of hard, but I did, catch lifts here and there, and then, I did buy my own one-day bus pass. I was very excited. Like, I love that the DPS cares about how we get to school and, how we leave from it.
And again, as you heard right from the child herself, it was difficult for her to get to school because they had originally taken away the bus passes. Now they just temporarily reinstated them. But again, this even puts additional pressure on this school system because now they are trying to avoid being fined for not picking up private school and non-charter school, and private school and charter school students by utilizing public school buses to pick them up. So you have a driver shortage. That's one issue, already tough on the system. Then you have a law in place that requires the same school system that's already struggling to provide the service to public school children to pick up charter school and private school students. It's just mind-boggling to me, and there's no need to get upset.
All I'm doing is presenting the facts.
That's all I'm doing. I'm just presenting the facts. In terms of other states, as I said before, this is not the only state that does this. So there are other states that actually have similar laws in place. In the state of Connecticut, Connecticut also requires that the public school districts provide transportation for children who attend private schools and charter schools. Now, in the state of Connecticut, it's only for private schools that are listed as nonprofit. And then also for charter schools, the charter school has to be within the same district. In Pennsylvania, they have similar laws as well. Pennsylvania requires that public school districts provide transportation for private school and charter school students, but the schools have to be within 10 miles of that of other schools or within that district in order for them to provide it. But there is a law in place that basically says, yes, you have to provide transportation, public school transportation for these private and non-charter schools and non-charter, and charter student, charter students, charter school students as well. And then there are a host of others in the state of Minnesota. It's mandatory as well that private schools are provided. It says that if a charter school doesn't provide or give notice that they will be providing charter school transportation, then they're not required to do it. But you have a host of states that actually have a handful of states that have these laws in place, which I mean, it is just mind-boggling to me that this is in place. And again, and I've stated this before, public use of dollars that go to private schools and charter schools is just, I'm just not on board with it. Never have been, never will be. I understand public schools are definitely in need of rehabilitation. Nobody's arguing that, but don't take public dollars and dedicate it, especially to private schools. That's just wow. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. I saw this story and I said, I got to jump on this to kind of get this out. And again, this goes back to what I've talked about a million times. This is where voting locally matters. Okay. This is what happens when you do not voice your vote locally and definitely on a statewide basis. National elections are polarizing. Everybody can talk about it. The information is easily accessible. And while you're worrying about and focusing on that, things like this happen. And now, you have tax dollars that are being allocated towards private initiatives. And ultimately, those with the least often are dealing with the most issues, or those who have the least are often affected the most. And so this needs to be addressed. Ohio and other states that I've mentioned, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, when this comes back up on the ballot, you guys really need to take a look at this and, exercise your vote. But that is my time for today. If you want to leave a comment, you can reach me at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram. You can also reach me at I Am Trey Evans on YouTube. I'll post this video and please leave a comment. As always, all comments are welcome. But as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.